floor for your questions, for your clarification. And then we will have a lunch at 12, lunch break. After that, we will return here at around 1 for the workshop. May workshop po tayo, no? May output po tayo. Sabi ng president natin, dapat may output eh. So I'll be giving you a workshop. It's going to be a collaborative work. So it's going to be a group work. I think obviously from the faculty members from the same department or program, I think. So meron kayong groupings, sila po ang bahala mag-grouping sa inyo. But I'll be giving you a template of your output for the workshop. Okay? Upo na ho kayo, yung mga, let's settle down so that we can start. Okay, review nga tayo. You still remember the 4 operating principles of OBE? Letter C stands for?
Clarity of
Clarity of focus. Very good. Letter H stands for?
high expectation.
High expectation. Letter E stands for?
Expanded opportunity.
And letter D stands for?
Lying down.
Parang mga estudyante. Very good, class. Galing nyo. Natandaan nyo yan. So, those are the 4 operating principles of outcome-based education. And as I've said, the 4 operating principles is the aspect of OBE message that is closest to the ground. And therefore, if we want to make sure that the ideals and beliefs of outcome-based education will come into life, will come into form, dapat alam natin yung 4 operating principles. At dapat i-implement natin sila lahat. We cannot be selective and discriminate. That we only clarify the focus but we don't set high expectation. We cannot just simply set high expectation without expanding the opportunity and without doing the design down. So all of them together should be implemented. Okay. And all of them is dedicated for the attainment of the centerpiece of OBE framework, which is the outcome. Outcomes are referring to demonstrable skills and competencies. Let's try to imagine that. Outcomes. In Tagalog, ano ba ang Tagalog ng outcome? Yung mga taga-Bulacan, yung
Purong taga.
mga malalalim ang Tagalog. Yung puro ang Tagalog. Ano po ang outcome sa Tagalog? Again po, ulit po. Ba't natatawa kayo habang sinasabi? Ang outcomes in Tagalog ay kinalabasan, kinahantungan. In mas mababaw is resulta. Diba? Bunga. Yan ang outcomes. Ano yung outcomes na hinahanap natin? Skills and competencies that can be demonstrated. So would that be enough to would tests paper and pencil test would be sufficient para may demonstrate ang outcomes? Hindi. Diba? So maybe what a paper and pencil test can give us is the knowledge, but it's not the outcome itself. So in outcome-based education, we have to focus on the demonstration of skills and competencies. And therefore, we should not be settled with the traditional assessments like paper and pencil test. Whenever I ask educators about what should concretely represent the outcomes, they would most of the time say scores, grades, averages. But I'm telling you, OBE is not so convinced that your scores or your grades are complete and accurate description of what you can do. I'm sure you will also agree with that. Let's say for example, sino po nagtuturo sa inyo ng general education? GE? Pero po, understanding the self. Taas ang kamay. Ayan. Do we give 1.25? Do we give 2.0? Do we give 1.75 grades in those subjects? What's the meaning of that? What can a student in understanding the self who got a grade of 1.5 successfully do? Ano kaya niyang gawin? And how different is his skills and competencies from those students in the same subject who got only a grade of 2.25? Ano kaya ni 1.5 understanding the self student na hindi kayang gawin ni 2.0 understanding the self student?
Yung exam lang sa...
Yung exam lang kasi pinagbasihan natin doon sa grade eh. Yung paper and pencil test at saka yung compliance niya doon sa mga pinasasubmit mo. Pero it's not really the outcome. Are you with me? So in outcome-based, ang definition ng outcomes is it happens. It's an occurrence, it's an event, it is something that can be tangibly seen by the teacher being performed and demonstrated by the student. And it is referring to what a student can do with what they know and understand. So kahit magkaroon ng matataas na grades, okay lang naman yan. We're not really against the grading system kasi yun yung ginagalawa nating sistema eh. But please don't call them outcomes. In many schools that I move around, when I ask them about how do they analyze outcomes attainment, what they show me are grades, scores, numbers. I always remember the words from the proponent of OBE. He said, you can always average the numbers, but you can never average the outcomes. Because outcomes are not numbers. In fact, qualitative nga yung outcomes eh. Diba? How well you can do and demonstrate the skills and competencies. And therefore, maybe in another occasion, we should talk about outcome-based assessment in a qualitative way. Rubric. Gumagamit po kayo ng rubric. Yung rubric niya may number. Oh, yeah. So, number pa rin yun. Nakakita na ba kayo ng rubric na walang number? Ang outcome-based, meron po tinatawag na facts-based rubric. And that facts-based is based on the acronym of FACTS. Criteria yun ng outcomes demonstration. Maybe in some other occasion we will talk about that because it's a long discussion. Okay, but one thing is for sure, outcomes are not numbers. You cannot average the outcomes. Eh, paano po ang expression ng outcomes? It is expressed in terms of carefully selected action words or verbs. I'm sure you know this. Okay? Because this is something that a student can do. It happens, and therefore, it entails actions or verbs. But this is the message. Not all verbs are created equal. Do you agree? Ano ibig nyo na naman sabihin sa not all verbs are created equal? Hindi lahat ng verb ay applicable sa iba't ibang level ng outcomes or outcomes level. For example, look at this. Meron tayong tinatawag na PEO. Tingnan niyo yung syllabus niyo at saka yung curriculum. May PEO yan. Ang PEO is Program Educational Objectives. Alam ba ninyo kung ano ang expected manifestation or demonstration ng PEO? It is expected 3 to 5 years after graduation. O, tingnan nyo yung PEO nyo. Makabuluhan ba ang mga verbs na ginamit natin? That we expect our students to be able to demonstrate, our graduates should be able to demonstrate 3 to 5 years after graduation. Imagine po natin yan. Ibig sabihin, yung mga bata, nasa na? Nasa field na, di ba? Nasa kanya-kanya ng respective workplaces, organizations, industry, or wherever they are affiliated. So let's reflect on this. Ano ang nakasulat sa PEO ng program natin? 3 to 5 years after graduation, these are the things that my graduates can do. May tamang verb para doon. May tamang verb para dito sa culminating outcome o yung tinatawag nating PO, SO, program outcome. This is upon graduation. Ito naman, CO is end of term or end of semester. Ito namang ILO ay end of chapter, end of unit, end of module, iba-ibang level ng outcomes demonstration yan. Now, ngayon ang tanong, balikan natin yung not all verbs are created equal. There are appropriate verbs or action words that can be used to represent us. And I'm telling you, hindi lahat ng nagamit mo dito ay pwede doon. Hindi pwedeng yung ginagamit mo dito, ginagamit mo rin yung verb na yun dito. So, merong appropriate verbs per level. Example, yung verb na contribute. You can only do that when you're already out there in the field. Eh kung ginamit mo yung verb na yan habang nag-aaral pa lang ang bata, lalo na kung dito pa lang sa module, ano? Meron akong nakikita ng mga ILO sa syllabus ng mga ibang school. Meron gumagamit ng verb na propagate. My God, that's a big word. How can you propagate? Eh, nandito ka lang sa lesson level. Ano ba yung ginagawa ng propagate? Hindi ko ma-imagine. Ito pa. Gumagamit ng verb na uphold. Eh, nandito ka pa lang sa mababang level na ito. Nag-uphold ka na dyan. Nasaan yung mga ganong verbs? Di ba dapat nandun yun? So, verb appropriateness. Dapat maging sensitive tayo dyan. I want you to look at your syllabus now. Anong mga verbs ang ginagamit natin per level of outcomes expression? Itong upon graduation, pwede bang produce? Ay, of course. Halimbawa, pinag-produce natin ang thesis work, pwede production yun. Appropriate siya doon. Pwede mo bang yung produce ilagay natin doon? Pwede naman. Kaya lang hindi mo mababantayan kasi yung production pag nasa labas na sila eh. Maybe you can monitor yung contribute dahil hahanapan mo lang ng ebidensya na halimbawa, contribute to research publication. Nagpa-publish kaya itong graduate namin. Madaling monitor yun. Pero yung produce, they should be closely monitored, closely evaluated. And this can be a good verb for the PO, right? Ito, write and present. These are verbs. And this is very direct, straightforward articulation of action words appropriate for the course outcome. Pagkatapos ng subject na to, at the end of this course, at the end of this semester, you should be able to write and present. Di ba clear? Huwag mong ilagay itong very straightforward verbs na to doon. Kasi hindi mo naman mamomonitor. Hindi mo directly ma-observe. Appropriate siya dito sa course level. Are you following me?
Yes.
Verb ng ILO. Ito yung mga synthesize, identify. That's appropriate for the lesson, module, unit, or chapter level. Tandaan nito ha, not all verbs are created equal. There are verbs that are appropriate at one level but may not be appropriate at another level. And we should be very, very aware about it. So kaya namin pinadala po yung mga syllabus ninyo. Ay gusto namin mag-reflect kayo. I don't want to critique your syllabus. I don't want to even dip my finger and tell you this is wrong, this is right. I want you to do some self-review and self-correction kung ano yung mga verbs na ginagamit natin. Okay po tayo doon? Okay. So, pansinin nyo, ang pagkaka-design natin nitong verbs na to ay naka-design down. Everything is connected. Because I want to see in the future that my graduates can be good at contributing research to the world through publication. Nakita ko na kagad yun, na-imagine ko na kagad na yung estudyante ko ay ganito magiging contribution sa society. Then i-sign down ko ng ganyan yan. Kaya meron akong subject na thesis, kaya meron akong subject na research methods, kaya meron akong lesson ng review related literature and literature mapping. Naka-design daw lahat yan. We observe, you systematically and deliberately design it that way. And the focus is very clear. So you implement it forward. Hindi mo naman ituturo agad eh. Ito ituturo mo. And you're clear about your focus. At this level, ito ang focus ko. This level, ito ang focus, and so on and so forth. So we design down, we clarify the focus, we set high expectation, and we expand opportunities. So the four operating principles are always there. It's always there. Nasa po yung graduate attributes? Meron kayo lang, di ba? Sa syllabus niyo. Hindi lahat ng school meron yan. Kayo meron kayong graduate attributes. I think ilan yan? At yung 4 na yan ay ang specific articulation ng attributes ng mission statements ng bulso. Are we clear on that? Okay. Outcome ba yun? Sige nga. Outcome po ba yung graduate attributes? Now, what I'm asking is, are they outcomes? Of course. Hindi lang naman ang outcomes ay demonstration of skills and competencies. Or else, magiging robot yan. Walang kaakibat na character. Tao tayo eh. So, outcome din, yung mga attributes na yan, na tinatarget natin. And in the process, as we teach all of them, ay ini-emphasize natin yung mga yun. Hindi mo na nga kailangan isa-isahin ang alignment. Eh. Dapat kasi, ito lahat ng ito, targeted sa lahat ng activities mo. The reason why I'm asking you to do this is because I want you to be globally competent. And so, gawin mo to. So the reason why I want you to do this is because I want you to be ethically grounded. And so do this. So itong mga to, hindi naman natin binigrade ng trade ba? Pero ito yung mga accompanying development that happens within the learners as we expose them to all these activities triggered by the verbs or action words. They are also outcomes. So it means to say, outcomes in the first place is referring to an action word or verb. But it doesn't necessarily mean that it's all about verb. It can also be adjective. It can also be adverb. Okay, so naging language teacher pa tayo ngayon. I hope you can follow this. Good. Okay. What do we do with this? At the school level, we need to upgrade the outcomes. We articulate, we granularize, we document, and we evaluate. Okay, before we proceed to the question and answer, allow me to discuss with you very briefly first about the articulation. After this, we will open the floor for your questions and clarification. And we will have a lunch break at 12. You will come back here at 1 for the workshop up to around 2:30. Tapos tuloy ulit ang discussion natin. Let's go first with articulation of outcomes. Okay. What's articulation? What's articulation? When you articulate, you're pointing out, right? You're pointing out something. And normally when you articulate, you're pointing out, emphasizing a very important point. So ang praise natin, initial praise natin or STEM praises, at the end of the program, pag PO, at the end of the course, pag CO, at the end of the module lesson, pag ILO, students are expected to, ito na, mag-articulate na tayo. Expected to what? Expected to do something. And here's the rule of thumbs in articulating the outcome. Smart. Start with a verb. Make sure that the verb is measurable. Always consider the verb's attainability. Raise the expectation and trace the links or the alignments of higher to lower level outcomes. Smart. Para malala natin lagi tayong gumagamit ng mnemonics. Let's be smart in articulating the outcomes. Let's start with the letter S. So, ang sabi natin, ang lagi nating STEM praise before we articulate the outcome is at the end of the semester, program, lesson, module, students are expected to, let's say, course tayo. Course muna. Course outcome 1, discuss. So, students should be able to discuss, analyze, produce. Di ba puro verb yan? And we arrange them systematically. In discuss, ginamit natin yung verb na yan to represent content. Because no matter what you say, contents are still important. They are foundational. You cannot demonstrate any competence or skills without you having a good content background or foundation. So, meron kang course outcome na pang content. Ito yung lagi ko sinasabi doon sa katanungan natin. Paano po yung mga board exam namin kung outcome-based tayo? Eh, ang board exam hindi naman outcome-based, content-based, multiple choice pa nga eh. Di ba? Eh kasi, yung ibang nag-implement ng outcome-based, pinabayaan na yung content. Puro activity na lang, puro skills demonstration. Nakalimutan si content. Eh, content is very foundation. That's the foundation of all skills and competencies. So, we also target content as an outcome. But we don't settle for content. In outcome-based, aside from content, we want them to show competence. After knowing the content, o kaya mong i-discuss, ano ngayon kung kaya mong i-discuss? Abay, kaya mong mag-analyze. So, analysis is a skill or competency beyond ability to recall or discuss. So, you can analyze. But we don't stop there. In OBE, the third dimension of learning, which is very crucial, is the context. Ano yung context? Yan yung application ng mga natututunan nila sa tunay na buhay. Nagturo ako ng statistics. This is how to do confirmatory factor analysis. This is how to do exploratory factor analysis. This is how to do bootstrapping. Anong kinalaman ito sa buhay? If I will not be able to relate what I am demonstrating in front of my students to them in real life, sooner or later makakalimutan na nila yung pinag-aralan nila. In psychology, there were studies about the the percentage of retention. Pag graduate ang bata, lahat ng pinag-aralan niya from the time he starts up to the time he graduates, more or less around 25 to 30% lang maximum na yun ang naaalala niya. Asa na yung tinuro natin na 40, 50, 60, 70, 80%? Tinapunan niya lahat yun kasi alam niya wala namang application sa real life. Kaya OBE is emphasizing on the context. So aside from teaching them the content and expecting them to demonstrate competence, students should learn how to relate what they learn in the classroom to an actual life context. And besides, ang application naman ng lahat ng pinag-aralan nila tunay na buhay. Ba't hindi natin i-connect? When I delivered the talk in senior high school, I think, parang naalala ko senior high school. Hinamon ako ng isang math teacher. Paano daw i-connect ang Pythagorean theorem sa tunay na buhay? Mahabang kwento yun, pero na-connect ko. Hindi ko kasi, hindi mo intention i-connect kaya hindi mo ma-connect. Kaya ang bata, pagka tinuro mo yan, maaaring naalala niya ngayon hanggang sa time na nagpa-exam ka, pero after na, kinalimutan na niya yan. Kasi nga, wala tayong intention i-connect. Let's connect it intentionally. So, pati ito naka-design down. The context informs the competence informs the content. And you implement it forward. So, design down, implement forward. Make sure that the verb is measurable. So, kanina sabi natin, not all verbs are created equal. There are appropriate verbs per level of outcome. Appropriate verb for PEO, appropriate verb for PO, CO, ILO. Here's another phase of not all verbs are created equal. Some verbs are measurable and some are not. And we would like to discourage you to use verbs that are not measurable. Ito, measurable ba itong mga to? Discuss, analyze, produce. Are they measurable? Paano natin sinusukat yung discuss? Hindi pagsulatin mo, hindi kayo pagsalitain mo yung bata. Diba? Gumawa ka ng activity na ma-expose yung ability niya to discuss. Tapos dugtungan mo ng adverb. Anong adverb ang magandang ilagay dyan sa discuss? Discuss thoroughly. Para pag gumawa ka ng rubric, hindi porket nakapag-discuss, okay na. Kailangan thorough ang discussion. So, meron kang rubric ng thorough discussions. Am I saying it right, ma'am? Language expert natin. Ako hindi naman ako English major. But that's how to do it. Yung analyze, measurable ba yun? Is that measurable? Do you ask your students, or do you expect your students to analyze? How do you measure? In statistics, madali yung analysis. Kasi alam namin yung analytics ng statistics. But in other subjects, do you expect your students to analyze? In language, do they analyze? Text analysis, discourse analysis, all these are analyzed. In science subject, do we expect our students to analyze? Yes. Even in history, we ask them to analyze. In almost all courses, we expect our students to analyze. And because that's measurable. Produce. Produce, obviously, measurable. Naubusan na ako ng tubig na measurable yan. Tangible pa nga yan. So when you ask your students to produce a robot, dapat may robot sa engineering. When you ask your students to produce an essay sa language, dapat may essay. When you ask your students to produce a research project, dapat may research. So lahat yan measurable. But I want you to look at this. Is that measurable? Tingnan nyo ngayon yung syllabus nyo, baka may ginagamit kayo ng mga ganyan verb. At the end of the course, the student should be able to appreciate. Is that measurable? It's not measurable, or it's difficult to measure. Embrace. May nakikita akong ganyan sa mga syllabus eh. At the end of the course, students should be able to embrace. I'm trying to imagine, I'm trying to figure out what will you embrace? And how will you do it? How will you embrace? Is that an outcome? Tingnan niyo muli ang syllabus ninyo. Baka gumagamit kayo ng embrace. Ito madalas po, understand. Ang tanong ko sa inyo, can we directly measure understand? Ang dami ko nakikita ng syllabus. Understand. Very arbitrary ang measurement. Let's use a more concrete, directly measurable verbs. Ito pa, isa nakakatuwa. Tingnan yung syllabus ninyo. Pati yung mga PO nyo, ha? Tingnan nyo yung mga verbs na ginagamit. Display. At the end of the program, students should be able to display. Display what? And what's the relevance of that? What will you display? Nung nakikita ko mga tumitingin sa syllabus, napapait. Ang verb nito. And I'm telling you, some of these verbs ay hindi natin kasalanan dahil ibinigay sa atin ng ahensya. Ha? Galing sa ahensya yung mga verbs na yan. But let's try to do something about it. Uphold. These are not so measurable verbs. Iwasan natin yun. Dapat ang verbs natin directly measurable. Okay? Are we on the same page? Good. Let's go with A. Always consider the verb's attainability. It's not just about measurability, but attainability. Realistic ba siya? The attainability of the verb is depending on the outcome itself. So, ano ba nilagay mo doon sa outcome? Halimbawa, ang nilagay mong verb doon sa outcome statement mo is published. Is it attainable in one semester? Attainable po ba in one semester? Attainable yan siguro sa mga predatory journals na willing ka lang magbayad, ipapublish nila yung work mo. Pero sa mga reputable journals, that's not attainable. Yung turnaround time ng publication process will take more than that. More than one semester. May review, babalik pa sa'yo yan, i-review ulit, and so on and so forth. So that's not attainable. So why will you place in your outcome a verb that is not attainable? You're not setting the conditions of success. You are setting and bounding your students to fail because they will never attain that verb in a given short period of time. So we have to be very cautious about attainability, not only on the aspects of measurability, but on the attainability. The opportunities provided, such as your support, the resources, this is all about attainability. Don't put a verb there, an action word that you expect your students to demonstrate but you as a teacher and your school as an institution is not willing to support. So laging babalik tayo dun sa accountability premise. School set the foundations of success. If you want your students to be successful, then set the foundations of success. Huwag kang maglalagay ng verb or action word na hindi ka ready i-support. Programs and so on and so forth. Maybe this is too much for many schools because this is what I learned from them. In my department, particularly in the psychology department of Mapua, when I was still the dean, I don't assign research courses to teachers or faculty members who have not published any paper yet. So my number one requirement for you to be given a research course, nag-publish ka dapat ng paper. During thesis defense, I don't allow faculty members to sit as panel members who have not published any papers yet. Ang taas naman ang ano yun, sir. Kasi I want to set the conditions of success. E paano po yung ibang school? It should be the direction. No? It should be the direction. Kasi imagine mo, nagko-comment ka sa research paper ng estudyante, ikaw mo wala kang sinusulat eh. Wala kang pinapublish. Hindi mo naranasang dumaan sa peer review process. Pero kung makapag-comment ka sa thesis ng bata, wagas. Parang ikaw pa yung ayaw magpag-graduate. Dumaan ka dun sa proseso na yun. Dapat na-experience mo yun. That's my message. And anyway, as dean, in my school, meron kaming discretion kasi gumawa ng ganong standards and policies for our department. So I insisted that. And so my teachers, my faculty members they were not forced. They were motivated to publish papers. And I would say I have 10 full-time faculty members way back then, and all those 10 faculty members have publications. Okay? Kasi kailangan nila mag-upgrade ng skills. If you want to sit as member of the panel, if you want to be a thesis advisor, you have to do this. So, hindi pwedeng one way ang expectation natin na we expect high from the student and we don't expect high from ourselves. All angles expect high. Okay. So, always consider the verb's attainability. Attainable ba yung mga action words na pinaglalagay natin sa document? R. Raise the expectation. So, let's say for example, you're teaching a research course. You say that at the end of the course, the students are expected to. I'm sure you're familiar with Bloom's taxonomy. Ito ang kwento nun, ang chismis niya. Itong si Bloom at saka si Spady, na father ng OBE, they are contemporary. At one point, they were acquaintance and friends. But at a certain point, nagkahiwalay sila. Dahil si Bloom ay gusto niya, ang mga verbs na yan ay nakafocus lang sa academics. Ang gusto ni Spady, go beyond academics. Kasi what's the use of academics kung hindi mo ma-embody yung tunay na buhay? Kaya merong ibang mga verbs na ginagamit si Spady na beyond sa Bloom's taxonomy. Okay, nevertheless, they are both advocates of masculine learning. They are both advocates of genuine assessment, things like that. So basically, ginagamit din naman yung Bloom's taxonomy sa OBE. Sige. Your subject is research course, and you are expecting your students to demonstrate certain verbs. What verbs will you choose? Kumusta po ang mga nasa 5th floor? Hello po. Are you following us? Meron po ba kayong proof of life? Paano tayo may proof of life ng nasa mga audiovisual room ng... Yes, sir. Thank you. May proof of life tayo, no? Ano yan, madidinig natin sila. Sige nga po, kayo po ang tinatanong ko ngayon. Pati yung mga nasa fifth floor, anong verb ang gusto mong gamitin dyan? Kung research ang subject mo. Ay, gusto ko po ito, dramatize. Ano ba naman? Research ay nagdadramatize. Let's hear from a random volunteer. Sige nga po, which verb would you like to use? Give me at least 3 verbs. Among all those verbs.
Compare.
Sino po mga nagtuturo ng research? Ikaw sir, nagtuturo ka. Sige, anong verb ang gusto mong gamitin dyan?
Sir, pwede siguro yung compare.
Compare. Asan yan? Ayan. Sige, isa. Tatlo sir. Ano pa?
Assess.
Assess. Ito. So may compare si sir, may assess. Ano pa sir?
Contrast.
Contrast. So at the end of the research course, students are expected to compare, assess, and contrast. Ano natapos niya doon? Kailangan matapos niya yung research kasi research course to eh. Di ba?
Yung
Tingnan niyo mabuti yung verb. Ang intention natin is makapag... Anong verb? Yes, ma'am. Produce. Ayan. So ano pa? 2 more verbs.
create.
Create. Ano ba pagkakaiba ng produce at create? Pwedeng... Students are expected to create, not only create, produce. Sinayang pa natin yung isa pang verb. Isa pang verb, ma'am. Analyze. So before you can produce something, you should be able to analyze. Yes, ma'am. Defend. So ano pa verb nyo? Isa pa. Tatlo pa. Dalawa pa. Code. Depende sa subject mo eh. Kasi kung tinuturo mo IT, nagko-coding ka. Or kung nagte-thematic analysis ka, naka-qualitative methods ka, may coding ka. Pero not only coding, nagka-categorize ka, nagte-thematize ka. Maraming purpose. Ano pang verb? It's up to you. But one thing is for sure, you raise the standard. I want to produce. If I were the one to design this course syllabus, I will not miss out this very important verb. Because at the end of the day, kahit naalala mo lahat ng elements ng research, kahit kaya mong i-define ang lahat ng types of research, if you cannot produce anything, hindi outcome-based. Di ba nakakapos sa inyo mga estudyante sa research dahil nape-perfect na yung paper ng pencil test? Pero wala siyang napuproduce. Medyo baba ko ng konti. Kasi para makapag-produce ka, dapat kaya mo mag-analyze. Diba? Pero, para matuto kang mag-analyze, kailangan mo mag-discuss. So, may levels tayo na increasing level yan. So, discuss, analyze, and produce. I'd like to call them COs. Course outcomes. At the end of this course, my students should be able to discuss, analyze, and produce. You see the leveling, yung increasing yung competency? Okay. The next thing to do is trace the links from higher to lower level outcomes. Ito yung links. Naka-design down tayo, ha? So, itong produce, ito yung unang pinning-point ko na verb. Beginning with an end in mind, at the end of this subject, my student should be able to produce. So, that's the end in mind. Pero para makapag-produce ang estudyante ko, my student should be able to analyze. Ayun siya. Pero para makapag-analyze ang estudyante ko, my student should be able to discuss. So, Beginning with an end in mind, naka-design down tayo. Ito muna, papunta doon. Ang tawag natin dyan ay vertical articulation of outcomes. Okay? Vertical articulation of outcomes. So, ang vertical articulation po pala ay hindi lang sa mga degree natin. No? Yung MA natin, yung undergrad, yung PhD. It's not just like that. So, in outcome-based education, there is what we call vertical articulation of outcomes. You begin with an end in mind, forward. Meron din tayong tinatawag na horizontal articulation. Sa bawat outcome, CO1, CO2, CO3, merong mga ILO, intended learning outcome, na naka-design down din. Ito naka-design down, ito naka-design down. Halimbawa, ang ILO3, yan ang una mong i-identify, ILO2, and then ILO1. Example. This is my CO3, produce. I want you to follow here. Kasi dito po mag-depende yung workshop na gagawin nyo dito sa dine-demonstrate ko. So, this is my CO3, produce. Para makapag-produce ang estudyante ko, i-break down ko yan into small chunks of outcomes. Ang tawag ko doon is intended learning outcomes. So, pipiliin ko itong create. Sabi ni Ma'am kanina, di ba? It's more or less may overlap. Pero ang production of something is also a creation of something. So, I want to use create. I want to use some verbs here on the next level, such as conclude and argue. I guess these three verbs, argue, conclude, and create, are important intended learning outcomes that will embody the verb produce. So, pipili lang ako ng verb na yan. Halimbawa, dito tayo sa CO2. Analyze. This is my course outcome number 2. And for my students to be able to analyze, magde-design ako ng ILO. I-break ko yan into smaller verbs such as calculate, compute, apply. It's up to you. Kung ano yung mga verbs na sa tingin yung applicable dun sa domain or dun sa field na itinuturo yung research. This is my CO1, discuss. So my students can discuss if my students can distinguish, define, identify. So ang tawag natin dyan ay horizontal articulation and vertical articulation of verbs. Do you follow po? So ang gawin nyo lang, libre naman i-download yung Bloom's Taxonomy para meron lang kayong guide sa pagpili ng mga action words or verbs. At i-arrange lang natin sila ng tama, naka-design down po ang arrangement natin. Beginning from the culminating demonstration to enabling demonstration down to the foundational or introductory. Okay. So ganito ang magiging demonstrating, enabling, introducing. Yan yung levels ng outcomes. So, parang dito naman sa ILO, yung ILO 3 natin, yung ultimate outcome, ito yung mediating outcome, ito naman yung foundational outcome. Okay, so gano'n lang ang level, naka-design down po tayo. Do you follow? Okay. May kinalaman mo ba yun sa JC3? Yan na naman tayo, binabalik na mamaya na yung JC3. Okay. So, summarize. Start with a verb. The verb should be measurable. It should always consider attainability, raise the expectation, and we trace the links. Okay, that's the SMART rules of thumb in articulating the outcomes. Ang kasunod nito ay workshop. So sa workshop po natin, mamaya, ito po yung magiging output natin. Pili lang kayo ng subject. Pili kayo ng subject. Yun bang subject natin ay, let's say for example, mathematics or kung language or science or whatever is that, lagay nyo lang dito yung mga course outcome nyo. Huwag yung course outcome po na nasa syllabus. I want you to free your mind from what has already been there. Kasi nangyayari kung ano yung nandiyan na lang, yun na lang ginagamit natin. But based on your learnings, based on your takeaways from the session beginning this morning, if you were the one assigned to make syllabus for your course, how do you make it right? What kinds of verbs will you use dito sa inyong course outcome? Okay? Yung course outcome 1 mo, ito ito yung introductory. Yung foundational lang siya. Yung course outcome 2 mo, parang reinforcing or enabling ang level niya. Ang course outcome 3 mo ay demonstrations. Tapos itong mga ILO mo, ganyan din siya. And then lastly, for us to be guided by, yung output, I want you to come up with your tangible output here. Sir, hindi ko ma-imagine yung gusto mong pagawa. Sige, bigyan ko example na lang. Ito example. Halimbawa, research pa rin tayo. So this is my course outcome 1, propose. Di ba? Para makapag-propose ang estudyante ko, ang ILO 1 ko is identify, ILO 2 is establish, ILO 3 is defend. And then my tangible output is a presentation of research proposal. Make sense? Connected lahat yan. So bago ko mag-develop itong mga ILOs na to, inalam ko muna kung ano to. Tapos, after this, saka lang ako nag-decide kung anong tangible output. Your tangible output should be logically following kung ano yung mga nagpo-produce based on outcomes. Okay, so my E is conduct. Let's say engineering tayo. Conduct an engineering research project using experimental procedures and methodologies. Because I also teach research in engineering and architecture in the master's level. So, sa architecture ako nagtuturo, sa master's level, pinapalitan ko lang yan. Research, architecture research. Pag psychology tinuturo ako, papalitan ko ng psychology research yan. So in this example, I'm giving you engineering research. So conduct an engineering research project using experimental procedures and methodologies. For this to happen, I have to break it down into 3 specific ILOs. Determine, perform, analyze, and interpret. And at the end of that, I'm expecting that my students should be able to come up with a tangible output, which is missing. What's wrong with this? Kasi, experimental di ba? So dapat, ang nasa dulo mo, full experimental report. Outcome 3, write and present a manuscript. Ito yung bottom line ng subject ko. Ang bottom line is, okay, nakapag-propose ka, nag-conduct ka nga ng experiment, ang bottom line is, I want you to write and present. And for them to be able to do this, break down ko lang into 3 ILOs, distinguish, compose, and present. So distinguish elements, types, styles of written engineering research papers, compose, finalize draft, present the project, and then my output is completed research manuscript and paper presentation. Picturean nyo na, sama nyo na ako para maalala mo yung project nyo yan. Yan ang magiging output natin mamaya sa workshop. So you can start doing that. I do not know how Ma'am Remy, kung paano yung groupings nila.
Meron na po siya.
Meron na. Sige po. Announce mo yan, tapos open na natin for questions. Thank you.
Okay, some announcements before the open forum. For the clustering, After lunch, you may proceed to the following venues. EVR 1, Kyle. EVR 2, KOE. Function Hall, 5th floor. There will be three colleges, CIT, CSSP, and CS. Function Hall, 7th floor, will be for CICT, COED, Bustos, Sarmiento, the Laboratory High School, the College of Nursing, Hagone Campus, and the Meneses Campus. And here in the amphitheater, we have CCJE, CAFA, CSER, NSTP, CHTM, CBA, and San Rafael Campus. So please make sure to proceed to these venues after the lunch break. The lunch will be distributed per college at the restaurant beside the CHTM, one representative, but we may not eat inside the venue po, pasensya na po. So we can eat in the restaurant itself. And then, during the clustering, the program chair of each program will facilitate the creation of the output. It will be submitted at 2:30. We will be providing a Google Drive link, which has already been emailed to you actually, as well as a copy of this sample and a blank outline for this template for this activity. There will be a random selection of five presenters after 2:30. And that's it for the announcement. Let us now open the floor for questions and clarifications. Those in the fifth floor, both ADR and conference hall, if you wish po to ask a question, you simply approach the computer and unmute the microphone so that we can hear your question and Dr. Macayan can address your questions.
Yun yung proof of life ng mga kasama natin sa big club, no?
Kaway-kaway. Kaway naman po ang mga nasa
Kaway-kaway
fifth
po
floor.
ang mga nasa fifth floor natin.
Proof of life.
Walang audio? So nakikita ba nila tayo?
Can
May
you hear
video
us?
sila. Kawayan nyo nga sila. Ako
Kayo lang, sir.
lang.
Kayo lang. Sir, kaway daw kayo.
So saan ako kakaway? Dito. Ito yung camera ko, di ba?
Naririnig po ba tayo ng mga taga fifth floor?
Kapatid niyo sa bayo.
Sa open forum po, kung may katanungan,
Pero
maaari po
magkaroon ng
kayo
sign language sa inyo.
lumapit sa computer at magtanong po sa computer. Simply unmute and Dr. Macayan will answer your question.
Wala lang, hindi nila nadinig.
Baka hindi na ganyan. Yung sa main lang, sir.
Okay po, we are opening the floor for questions and clarifications.
First one, approach the computer.
From the seventh floor po, is there a question or clarification with regards to the concepts presented by Dr. Macayan?
Anything, except for my personal life, I can respond to that question.
Meron po bang nais magtanong from the group?
Alam niyo yung OBE nung inintroduce sa ating kasiyahan, way back a decade ago. A decade ago. When it was introduced, it was not introduced with an explanation about its philosophy and belief system. It was only introduced as a framework that we should use for our accreditation, parang compliance framework siya. Kaya ang maraming schools, may sumunod nga, pero hindi sustain yung pagsunod. Dahil hindi nila alam bakit nila kailangan gawin ito. Kailangan ganito itsura ng syllabus. Kinaalala niyo ba yung syllabus ng mga bata pa tayo? Naalala niyo yung syllabus natin, ha? Hindi naman ganyan itsura eh. Bakit nila dami-dami mga table, tapos may mga check, may mga... Hindi naman po kasalanan ni OBE yun. Kasalanan, hindi naman kasalanan. Requirement po yan ng accreditation, not ng OBE. Because later, before we end our today's session, I'll be giving you some discussions about what really is an outcome-based syllabus look like. How it looks like. Hindi naman nilihingi yung mga kung ano ng mga sa kaibigan natin eh. Ang crucial dun is yung articulation of outcomes. So the good thing about attending seminars like this is we come to learn about the background philosophy, the foundations of why we do these things. So any question or anything that you want to clarify so far about what we discussed? May question po. Basahin mo na. Pero maiyak.
Unang question po is, OBE versus misaligned students, course, inborn skill, or talent. So, I guess, base po sa pagkakaunawa ko,
I-clarify mo ang focus ng tanong.
I think ang tanong po dito is with regards to the different, the multiple intelligences of a student. Because as you said earlier, all students will learn at their own pace or at their own time.
Yeah.
But, and each student has his or her own capacity.
Yes.
But then, all students, for example, are required to take research classes. But if I'm a student and my intelligence is not aligned with logical mathematics, or the languages, if my intelligence is kinesthetic, and I do not have the facility to be able to achieve at this point in time where I need to graduate. So how can we address that?
That's the reason why we really need to open the minds and perspectives of all schools to diversify and make more flexible standards. Kaya nga sabi ko kanina yung when and how, ito yung culprit ng education. Ng current education system. We are so focused on the when and how. It's as if pag nag-deviate sila dun sa sinabi mong how, hindi na sila natuto. Meron kaming subject, meron kaming culminating requirement sa Mapua, yung tinatawag na student portfolio. Ang student portfolio is dino-document niya yung learning journey niya sa subject. Ang ginawa ng isang teacher, you should be able to submit your portfolio at this schedule. Failure to submit your portfolio